Okay.
All right, this is just a brief video to give you an idea of how to adjust the steering collar as well as check for proper installation. So I'm going to go ahead and show you here. I'm going to take off all the packaging that's covering the steering collar here. Now you could probably do it by just poking a hole in the bubble wrap and checking it through that, but I'm going to go ahead and take that off just for the sake of this video. But there's a couple of things that you want to check right away with the steering collar. And the first one is you want to check this. This is a pin here. You want to check its function. It's supposed to be in, so you want to check it by pulling it out and just letting it go back in. There should be no binding. There should be no tough spots in the pin. It should just pull in and go back, pull out and go back in very smoothly. You'll notice that there's some red safety marks on the pin. Now if you can see those once you release the pin, that means there's a problem and the pin has not seated all the way back into the spot where it's supposed to go. So when you're done checking that, the pin should be fully seated and you shouldn't see any red marks. Now the other thing you want to check in the system is the preload. Now with the preload, what you want to do to check the preload is go ahead and grab the fork down here at the bottom and then put your other hand on the steering collar here. And you want to check two things. One, you want to check the vertical play. You want to make sure there's no gaps anywhere along this system, so you can do that by pulling up on the steering collar and down on the fork. You shouldn't have any movement there. And then the other thing you want to check for is you want to spin the whole system, and you want to make sure that it's real smooth as it spins. You don't want to have any gravelly feel or any rough spots in there as you're turning it. And so those are the things you can check. So assuming the preload and the pin are functioning properly, you want to go ahead and check your bolts here. We've got two 6mm bolts, and they take a 5mm Allen wrench here. You just want to go ahead and put a wrench on those and make sure they're torqued to 8 Newton meters. So you can do that with this upper bolt, and then we've got one more lower bolt back here. So you want to check those, make sure they're torqued all the way down. And so one of the problems that you might run across is if you have a pin that is binding, it's not functioning properly. What you want to do is undo the two bolts. So we've got again the lower one here. We'll just undo that, and you can see that this lower bolt actually tightens down that collar and keeps it from spinning. So when you loosen it, you'll be able to spin the lower portion. And then you want to make sure you loosen the other bolt. And what you would do in the event that the pin was not functioning, sometimes there's a gap. You can see up here where the collar meets the top of the fork. And if there was a gap there, you'd want to go ahead and use a mallet or some other soft hammer or something like that. And you can just tap it down real gently without damaging the collar, and just make sure that the collar seats on top of the fork. And then that should go ahead and allow the pin to seat properly. So then when you're done with that, you want to go ahead and tighten your bolts back down. Do that here real quick. We'll tighten the upper bolt down first, because that locks the main part of the collar in. And then what you want to do to adjust your preload is you want to spin this lower collar back and get the collar to the point again where you want to check the preload. Make sure you've got no vertical play, and then also you want to make sure that it's turning smoothly. And then you want to go ahead and tighten down your lower bolt back to 8 Newton meters. So the other situation you might come across is where you have a pin that's functioning properly, but you do have some vertical play, or the preload is too tight. And the way you would do that is you would just loosen the lower bolt. You loosen the lower bolt and then only move the lower collar to adjust your preload, either loosen it or tighten it. So, and then again, every time you loosen a bolt, you want to make sure that you tighten it back up to the right torque. So all of those little tips should help you troubleshoot or just verify the proper installation of the C-Series steering collar.